Welcome to Papa's Workshop. I've got exciting news today because in this video, we're going to be assembling this new CNC machine by FOXAlien. So let's get started. I am so glad that they put this label on here that says fragile. I'm not sure exactly if anybody understands it because I've got a hole in this box. This box is actually crushed on this side. So hopefully everything will be fine, and it says fragile too. And then the next box. This next box was just beat to heck and back, and it is all taped up, and it's bulging. So depending on just how good the packaging was, we'll see if this machine survived. So this is how I received the boxes. Now I received the first box about 2 weeks ago, and these last two came today. Okay, we're going to start with the worst one first, and let's just see how it survived. Now, FOXAlien has been excellent as far as their packaging in times past, but I tell you what, this one is really putting them to the test. I have never seen a box this damaged, this well taped back together, and it's actually bulging. So I know the parts are not in place inside of this box. Now that we've got it open, we can see the problem. This part looks like it came completely out, and they had to put it back in and didn't do a real good job. What I'm most concerned about is that limit switch, because it was exposed and I know it was beat up some. But actually, it looks like it has survived. I'm going to go through each of the boxes and check and make sure that no parts are missing and that everything has survived. Now again, this box was the worst, and it looks like everything else in this box is okay. I'm going to quickly go through this box because this one actually has the least amount of damage on it. It had that little part that was crushed at the back, but I think that the padding inside is going to be just fine. And everything looks okay. So I'm going to go ahead and unbox this one real quick and just double check and see if there was any damage. But thank you to FOXAlien for their extreme well packaging of their CNC machines. Now this is actually the first box that I had received about 2 weeks ago, so I'm very confident that everything is going to be fine in this box. It really didn't have any damage to this one. I don't know how they got separated in shipping, but they certainly did, and the other two boxes paid the price. I have everything out of the box now, and this is the complete CNC machine. And after looking at everything, it appears that everything has survived the shipping. I do not see any damage, and I think all of the parts are here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started of putting this together. For the first step in assembling this, we need the two Y1 and the Y2 profiles to be able to get those. And we need the dust baffles, and we're going to put the dust baffles on first. And to do that, we have the screws right here, and we're going to be using the M514 button head screws to be able to put it together. On the dust baffles, there is a left and a right. You'll notice that you have this slot right here, and down at the other end, you have a slot also. Now this is only on the left one. The one on the right does not have that slot. So it's very important. Let's make sure we get that on correctly. And the reason being is because of these limit switches. We have a limit switch here, and we have a limit switch right here. So when this dust baffle goes in, you can see how that limit switch actually protrudes through that slot just ever so slightly. So let's go ahead and get these screwed on. Now mounting this to the Y1 and the Y2 axis is actually very straightforward. The holes on the Y1 and the Y2 axis are already drilled and tapped, so it's just simply a matter of lining up the holes with this baffle and screwing it in. Now I do put all of these screws in loosely to begin with. Do not just put the first one in and tighten it up, because you're going to have an alignment problem. So put each of the screws in. Leave it loose until you have all 4 of the screws in for each of the baffles. Once they're in place, then go ahead and tighten it up. The left baffle for the Y1 axis is now on, and I want to go ahead and get this next one on. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and get all the screws laid out and just slip this right into place. Now this goes in actually quite easily. I like the fact that the holes are already pre-drilled and tapped, because that makes it where there is really no guesswork. Just remember, keep those screws loose until you have all 4 of them in place, and then tighten them. Now the next part we're going to assemble is the X-axis profile. Now these holes right here need to be along the outside, and this is also drilled and tapped on each end. And you need to make sure that this is oriented correctly, because there are no holes over here that are drilled and tapped. So this must be facing the outside. Now to attach this, you're going to need the M520s to be able to attach it, along with the lock washer and the flat washer. So that's going to slip in first, and then the flat washer. So that's going to go on just like that. These bars actually have 2 holes on each side. Now on the front of the CNC machine, you're going to need both of those holes, because there are 2 screws on each side. However, on the back, when you go to put that X profile in, there is only 1 screw on each side. But to make it easier to manufacture, they did have it drilled and tapped, so they're interchangeable. Again, we're going to take the M520, slip on the lock washer, slip on the flat washer. That's going to slip right through this hole and into the 1 hole here. Now I'm just loosely tightening this right now. I'll tighten everything up in just a moment. Now that I've got all of the M20s in for the X profile, the next thing, there's screws that go into the ends. Now that's going to be the M530 millimeter. So we're going to put those in next. Now the M530s go right into these 2 holes that screws into the X profile. And again, we have the lock washer and the flat washer for this to slide onto. And then that will slide right into there. As you install these screws, hopefully you remember that the other screws that you just put in are still loose. What you need to be able to do, and this is very, very important, tighten these screws first. It makes everything secure. If you tighten the ones on the other side, then it's not going to work, because these will not be able to pull the metal together and have the correct distance. And that's going to make putting the gantry on nearly impossible. So tighten these screws first. So you can see right now I am tightening these screws first, and then I move over to the other part of the machine and I tighten the screws here. This is a critical step that you must follow, or you will have problems when it comes time to put the gantry on. Now remember all these holes that had to be along the front? Well, now we're going to use those holes that are drilled and tapped on the front and on the back to be able to attach the wasteboard. And to be able to attach the wasteboard, we need the M516s to be able to do that. And we're going to be putting two in the front as well as 2 in the back on each one of the pieces. I decided to get all of the pieces and spread them out and put them basically in place to begin with. This is a step that's really not necessary. It just helps me to stay organized. And all I'm doing is just sliding this over until it lines up. I can drop the screw in and go ahead and just lightly tighten this. It does not need to be very tight at this point. Again, the same rule applies. Go ahead and put all of these screws in. Once they're all in, then go back and tighten everything. It really makes the alignment much easier. So we lined it up, drop the screws in, and just tighten them. It doesn't really matter where you start. If you want to start in the middle, that's okay, because all the holes line up perfectly. Now this is the last two, so at this point all of them are in, so now I can go ahead and tighten everything. We'll tighten each one of them all the way across, front and the back. The base of the CNC machine is now assembled. It's really very straightforward, and there's minimum amount of parts that actually go together to create this base. Now it's time to go ahead and put the gantry on. And it has these slots where it actually slides in. It's a brilliant design. I love this. Now if you did everything correctly on the base, this is just going to drop right in place perfectly. If not, it's going to appear that the base is too big and you're going to have to go back and do a little bit more adjusting. But you can see how that just drops right in place, and now the way it's designed, it's not going to fall out. From there, all you need to do is put the 4 screws in on each side, tighten it down, and you're done. The alignment on this is really preset by design, and the way this is configured, it's not going to move as you're assembling it, and it's going to be able to stay in place while you're using the machine. I'm going to say it one more time. Like every other element on this machine, I always put the screws in first, make sure the alignment is correct, and then I go back and tighten all of the screws. And you're probably going to get tired of me hearing that, but I can promise you there are going to be some people out there that don't follow this step, and they're going to find themselves having to go back and redo and causing themselves just a little bit of a headache. It's time to put the Z-axis on, and these are the holes that I need to be able to mount it to. And what I have found is that I need to move this Z-axis down just a little bit to be able to get access to those holes. Now I can do that just by turning the knob on top of the stepper motor, and here's the bottom 2 screw holes, and they will be clear once you clear the other part. They will be mounted right into these 4 locations. Again, they are drilled and tapped. The screws that we're going to be using are these right here. There's 4 of them. That's all that you're going to need. This is actually very straightforward, and all I'm doing is just putting 1 screw in at a time and bolting all 4 of them in. Please do not tighten these screws first. We need to make sure that the Z-axis is plumb or square, however you want to call it, to the wasteboard. There is just a little bit of movement, and we need to make that correction to ensure that this is plumb both directions. Okay, all 4 screws are in. Grab you a square, put it up against the axis and check. If it's good and square, then you can just snug it up a little bit so it won't move. Make sure that that is perfectly square. You have just ever so slight amount of movement. If you've ever heard of people complaining about getting ridges when they are skimming their wasteboard, This is one of the reasons that it causes is where this is not plumb to your wasteboard. Take time, do this correct, and make sure that it is square to the wasteboard, and you need to do it on both axes. Once you've checked both directions and you think you have everything tight, check it one more time in both the X and the Y axis to verify. This is critical. Next, we're going to move and attach this limit switch. If you have two small little screws, you can just go ahead and screw this in, and this is very straightforward and easy to be able to do. But you have to do this after you mount the Z-axis, because this actually covers up part of the screw down here at this bottom left-hand corner. Next, it's time to mount the router. With this kit, you actually get 3 mounts. One for the DeWalt 611, one for the spindle that comes with the CNC machine, and that's what I'm going to use, and a third one for the Makita router. This is absolutely amazing. Now I'm going to go ahead and mount this directly to the Z-axis with the M550 screws, and it's, again, very straightforward. Everything is pre-drilled, tapped, and it can just go right into place. The folks at FOXAlien has certainly made it easy to be able to assemble this machine. The thought and the design work that went into this is amazing. I am just so excited about how this machine is going together very easily, and the construction of this machine is just amazing. Like everything else, don't tighten these screws yet. You still have one more check. What is that? Grab that square again. Make sure that it's square, because you do have some room here that you need to be able to make sure that there is no movement at all and it's perfectly square to the table. Now just tighten the 2 screws on the left. That takes care of it. And you don't need to check it on the Y-axis, because that's already secure with the Z-axis that you just put in. Drop in the spindle, and now the 2 screws on the right side can go ahead and be tightened. I'm going to do the final adjustment on the height of this later, when I'm actually starting to do the first carving. Also, as I begin to do projects with this CNC machine, I will be putting in the DeWalt 611 and testing that out with this unit as well. Can't wait. I am really looking forward to it. Here are 2 T-nuts on the back of the gantry that I need to be able to put in place. It's time to start putting the brackets on for the drag chain. This bracket right here is the largest one, and it has these 2 screws that is going to hold it into place. Again, this is very straightforward, and all you need to do is just slip the screw right through the hole on the bracket and just match it up to the T-nut. The T-nut will slide left or right as needed so that you can place this bracket into position. Tighten this down and we can move to the next step. The remaining 3 brackets are all bundled together with this stretch wrap. And I'm going to start with the largest one, and we're just going to work down. Now this largest one will actually go to the mount to the top of the Z-axis. I'm going to move quickly through this because this is very easy and very straightforward. But this largest bracket just mounts to these 2 holes right there. They're just going to screw into place, and that's it. Just tighten them down, and the drag chain will just mount right onto this bracket. From here, we're going to go ahead and move over to the side of the machine and mount the other 2 brackets there. On the side of the machine, I'm going to take this bracket and I'm going to mount it onto the gantry, and here are the 2 holes for that. Again, it's the same screw that will go right into that bracket and screw it into position. Now the third one that we're going to do is a little bit different. So let me show you how we're going to do that one. This last bracket actually mounts to the Y1 axis right down at the very bottom. The best way to do this is go ahead and put the 2 screws into the hole and then attach the T-nuts to it. This is a very important step. It makes it a whole lot easier. So this is the setup. The T-nuts are screwed onto the ends and they're literally positioned horizontal. And then just hold these 2 screws, slide it right into the slot. Now those T-nuts will drop right into position so long as they are horizontal or parallel to that slot itself. From there, grab your Allen wrench, tighten it, those T-nuts twist just a little bit and lock in place. And then you can secure it with the screws. Next is the drag chain. Now I guarantee you when you unpack this, it is not going to be laying out correct. The first step that you want to do, since everything here is pre-wired and pre-run through these drag chains, is take your time and get these untwisted, if you will, and organized so that you know exactly how they're going to lay out, and do it carefully and put them in position before you ever try to do any of the attachment. Now this will take just a little bit of an effort to be able to get them organized and get them in position. But once this is done, and this looks a little bit clumsy right now, but it does get better, because if you can get them organized and laid out correctly, then being able to attach them with the screws at each end becomes very, very simple. You want to take your time. You want to be careful. You don't want to damage any of the wiring. And all you need to be able to do is look at the ends of the wire, see where they need to go, and position it approximately in the correct location. And once that's done, then you will have the organized chaos under control. And there we go. It really wasn't that bad. But now that they're in the approximate location, I can go ahead and get the screws and just screw in each end of the drag chain into the appropriate bracket, and that will complete it. All I'll need to do then is just match up the wires and plug them in. I never rush this step because, quite frankly, if you rush this and damage the wires, it's going to cause a lot more problem than if you just take your time, work with the wires, and maneuver everything into position. These little screws are small. You do have to move the wires back and forth to be able to gain access to these little holes, but just take your time. This is not a difficult task at all, and quite frankly, there's not that many wires in the drag chain to really worry about that much. So now at this point, all I'm doing is just going through and attaching all of the screws at each end of the drag chains, and there's 2 screws at each end. Once you have all of the screws secured and the drag chains are all in place, then it's just a matter of being able to plug in the different connectors. Everything is color coded and clearly marked, so you have no difficulty in being able to plug in the appropriate wires. Just be careful, don't leave any unplugged. But this goes very quickly, and it's a very straightforward process, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Just take your time again, be precise, and plug in each one of them correctly, and you'll be set. Now it's time to test out the machine, and all I'm going to do for this video, because it's getting rather long, is be able to make sure that you can see that it can move left, right, back and forward, up and down, and do what it's supposed to do. And then in the next video, I'm going to go ahead and start doing some projects, and we're going to start with some easy projects, and we're going to progress on through to some of the more difficult projects. So you're not going to want to miss out on that. So by all means, if you haven't subscribed already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you won't miss out on the different projects that I do with this machine and in the other projects that I'm working on. This, I'm real excited about. This is a great machine. So thank you to all of the folks at the FOXAlien for designing such an outstanding machine. I think your team did a fantastic job. One thing that I do want to point out when you're connecting the wires, you have this wire that needs to run from the Y1 over to the Y2. And what I have found, it just slips right into that track and then you can plug it in. Turn over the bottom of the controller and you'll see this power switch right here from 110 to the 220. Make sure it is set for the correct voltage that you have in your house or shop. So then, last but not least, you take these connectors, and again, they are very clearly marked, color-coded, and labeled, so it's just a matter of plugging them in and tightening it down. So again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I do like to start at the bottom, connect the various wires, and then move to the top row. To me, this is a lot easier to be able to do it this way, and it just keeps it a little bit more organized. The last thing I want to point out is the switch right down here. If you're going to be using the spindle, make sure that switch is to the right. Likewise, if you have the laser attached, switch it over to the left so that it's on the laser mode. Don't forget, please check your e-stop. That e-stop was actually pushed down, so it would not have worked. So make sure that you twist it and that it comes up in the full up position. That way you're not going to get any surprises when you start turning this on. Now I use the universal G-code sender, and I use the older version. And really the only reason is because that's what I started with. I like it and it does exactly what I need it to do. Now to be able to run this with the FOXAlien machine, I do have this set at COM5. The bond setting is the 115-200 and it is set for the Gerbil. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit open, and then I need to come up here to the machine controls and I need to be able to hit the $ and X, and that unlocks it. At this point, now I should be able to move the machine in any direction that I want. Now right now it's set for the 1 inch, so I'm going to go ahead and click this, and we might be able to hear it in the background, but let me go ahead and focus this to you so that you can see the machine. Now with a little luck, you'll be able to see the computer screen and you'll be able to see the CNC machine. So what I'm going to do with this set at the 1 inch, I can click this on the X-axis and you can see that it moves the 1 inch. I can also move over here to the other X on the plus, and I can move back in this direction. And I can also move on the Y-axis. So everything is working correctly. Likewise on the Z-axis. So this verifies now that the machine is working, that I do not have any problem with the limit switches, and of course I don't have the e-stop switch pushed down. This also will verify that the UGS is communicating with the CNC machine, and I am now ready to be able to start the first project. Now because this video is getting to be a little bit long, I'm going to go ahead and start the projects on the next video. So I want to thank everyone for watching today. I certainly enjoyed putting this machine together. I hope you did, and I hope you have fun building yours and can come back and use this as a reference when you're assembling your machine. The other thing I like about the universal G-code, I can come right up here and I can put in, let's say, 3 inches, and then I can go ahead and move 3 inches at a time, or whatever unit of measure that I want to put in. If I want to switch this over to millimeters, all I have to do is just click that and it'll be running in millimeters. So this is fantastic. I really like this. The machine is quiet, it's smooth, and it's solid. So again, thank you very much for watching today, and I look forward to seeing you when I start doing the projects in the next video.